Good morning, Europe. It's Monday, the 14th of May. Our top stories for you. Israel on edge. As the new U.S. Embassy opens in Jerusalem, Palestinians gear up for mass protests in Gaza. And over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
A hero for Israel or an obstacle to peace? Donald Trump's bold decision has got a lot of you talking on social this morning. We'll have all your views right here in the Cube.
Plus, security miss. Turns out the Paris knife attacker was on France's anti-terror watch list. And see you in Jerusalem? How the new Eurovision champion caused a stir with 4 little words. Thank you for starting your week with us. Our top story today, all eyes are on Jerusalem as the U.S. makes the controversial move of opening an embassy there, timed to coincide with the 70th anniversary of Israel's Declaration of Independence. Well, tensions are high in the region, a day ahead of what Palestinians call Nakba, or the Day of Catastrophe, marking the loss of land they consider their own. Euronews journalist Evelyn Lavrick has this story.
Israel is leaving nothing to chance security-wise as it prepares for one of the most controversial embassy openings in recent times. While the moving of the U.S. mission from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem has delighted the Israeli government, Palestinians are furious and massive protests are expected. President Donald Trump has sent his daughter Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner, both senior White House advisors, to attend the ceremony. The opening keeps one of Trump's election campaign promises and follows an equally controversial announcement last December.
Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Trump's declaration broke with decades of U.S. neutrality on the issue, and the subsequent move of the U.S. Embassy puts him out of step with the international community. But Israel's Prime Minister has urged other nations to follow suit.
I call on all countries to join the U.S. in moving their embassies to Jerusalem. Move your embassies to Jerusalem because it advances peace.
But angry Palestinians who claim East Jerusalem as the capital of a future state have been staging a series of rolling protests. Today could be the largest yet seen in Gaza, where Israel has reinforced its troops. Evelyn Lavrick, Euronews.
Over 40 Palestinians have reportedly been killed in border clashes since the end of March. So what can we expect today? Euronews correspondent Alistair Sanford joins me in the studio. Alistair, today for some people it is a day of celebration. For others, it's a day of mass protests. So what can we expect from the region?
First of all, for Israel, yes, it is a day of celebration. For most Israelis, this is the move they've been waiting for, this symbolic move of the moving of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. At the moment, of course, it's only relatively small. It's offices that are there already, just a few staff, but of course it's the symbolism behind this. Massively divisive, though, internationally. The Israelis wanted to make a big thing of it, coinciding with Jerusalem Day. They've invited some 86 countries, of whom only just over a third have accepted. Now, the EU is amongst those who've refused to go along with this, saying they respect the international consensus on Jerusalem and they don't recognise it. That said, at least 4 countries have broken ranks with the EU and are sending representatives: Austria, the Czech Republic, Romania and Hungary. Of course, for Palestinians, this is disastrous. You've mentioned the protests we've had so far. They're gearing up for many more across the West Bank and Israel. It's, of course, the 70th anniversary of the creation of the Israeli state. So there's this word catastrophe for the Palestinians, Nakba. We hear already that there are some clashes at the border in Gaza. The Israeli military have dropped leaflets warning people to stay away from the border fence. They've fired tear gas into Gaza. Hamas, of course,
and we are
threatening
looking at
them.
quite some violent pictures over here, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Now, there have been warnings for months now that this could cause violence. That said, there are some that say, well, despite all that, it's actually not as bad as could have been expected. And to a certain extent, people are going through the motions. Yeah,
and now moving on to a bigger picture, the U.S. has been a mediator, so to speak, in this Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And now what role are they going to be playing?
Well, for the Palestinians, they've been saying now that with this move by the United States, that effectively disqualifies them as a mediator in the peace process. They say this means that it's a completely one-sided move by the US. It puts them firmly in the Israeli camp. They have no credibility left. Jerusalem, of course, is highly important. It goes to the heart of the conflict itself. It's the holiest, it contains the holiest sites for Judaism, for Islam and for Christianity. And in the accords that were struck back in the 1990s, the status of Jerusalem was something so difficult that it was only supposed to be left until the very end of the process. And now here we've got this move by the US, which you could arguably say destroys the Americans' credibility. Now, the Trump administration disputes that. It says that this does not prejudge the final borders for Jerusalem, and their position is not compromised.
All right, thank you for that, Alistair. We will be keeping an eye on the developments here. Thank you. Well, Donald Trump may not be in attendance today, but his image is ubiquitous in the region, and that's because of this decision he had made. Alex, tell us more about this.
Yeah, absolutely, Tessa. A lot of views, a lot of perspectives on this. Here in theCUBE, we are listening to all of your voices. Euronews, we're all about hearing those perspectives. The team here looking for everything you're saying. And Tessa, your point there that his image is all across the region. It literally is. This is even on the camera. We want to push in here. This is an... Oh, we've lost it there. Here we go. Hang on, it's coming back. There we go. It's a new coin minted in Israel by an Israeli group. There is Donald Trump. You recognise him. Probably won't recognise this biblical figure here. That's King Cyrus, the biblical figure who welcomed the Jews back into Jerusalem 2,500 years ago. So for groups like this, Donald Trump is being compared to a biblical hero for his decision. Also, there was Jerusalem Day over the weekend. Abe was there. He was one of those there. You can see him posing at the bottom here next to a sign reading, "Trump is a friend of Zion." So for many people, including Laura Loomer, who is an American right-wing, I suppose you could say, journalist, pro-Trump supporter. Here, she's talking to a street vendor who is selling pro-Trump, Make America Great Again kippahs. So there's a sense that in Jerusalem, a lot of people are welcoming the president's decision. Not everyone around the world, however. This, from the satirical cartoonist Jim Morin, shows Donald Trump squaring off against war, asking if it's going to go to the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem. And perhaps a more serious point I want to end on from 95-year-old British political thinker Harry Leslie Smith, who basically says, yes, Israel has the right to exist, but this formally recognising the capital as Jerusalem, is premature. It's going to get in the way of the two-state peace solution. So a lot of views, a lot of perspectives on this. And we're wanting to hear from you as well. Let us know what you think. Hashtag theCUBE. We'd love to hear from you, the team here, listening to all your perspectives.
All right, thank you for keeping an eye on that, Alex, and theCUBE and our social media team. All right, let's just cross live to some images that we're seeing right now. These, I believe this is taking place in Gaza. Some protesters already burning tires there in the background. Now, we know that for the Palestinians, they were supposed to be protesting tomorrow on the day of catastrophe, or Nakba as they call it, but they moved it to today to coincide with the U.S. Moving their embassy to Jerusalem, as well as the 70th year of the founding of Israel. So we can see images of protesters. It's starting right now. We can see people gathering. So this is something we are keeping an eye on for you throughout the day. Now to France. More details are emerging about the man who went on a stabbing rampage in Paris on Saturday. The suspect was 20 years old, of Chechen origin, and on a French terrorism watch list. Before he was shot dead by police, he killed one 29-year-old man and wounded 4 other people. Let's cross live to our correspondent, Annelise Borges in Paris. Annelise, this is something we've heard before. Someone on a terror watch list, yet goes on to commit an attack. Tell us more.
Indeed, Khamzat Azimov, a 20-year-old French national born in Chechnya, had no criminal record, but was indeed what the French call a fichier S. That's according to a judicial source close to the investigation. And that means that this was a person indeed suspected on a watch list for people suspected of having radicalized views, for people suspected of posing a threat to security here in France. Police are, though, still trying to verify whether or not he was indeed a member of ISIS, whether or not he was directed by ISIS in this attack, as the group is, of course, claiming online with that video, alleged video of the suspect, of the assailant, pledging allegiance to ISIS. Police had his parents and a friend of his in custody throughout the weekend, and they're still trying to work out exactly the connection. But of course, this follows another attack in the south of France just 2 months ago, and it goes to show, if indeed he was directed by the group, just how much of a threat ISIS still poses to France and to Europe. And that, Tessa, is precisely the point that the head of the security agency MI5, the UK security agency MI5, Andrew Parker, is going to try and make today in Berlin. He's going to be speaking at a conference, a security conference in Berlin, about the importance of EU countries working together, sharing intelligence and responding together to these kinds of incidents. Of course, with Brexit, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen with the cooperation between the UK and other EU countries.
And of course, at least the night of the attack, you were there. What can you tell us about what it's like now, 2 days after that incident happened?
Well, Tessa, I just spent some moments here at this cafe. This was really the scene of the crime. The suspect, the assailant rather, ran up and down the street. We were kept at a distance. We were kept a few meters behind me. Journalists could not access the area. Of course, this was a crime scene. There were forensic officers everywhere. There were police officers everywhere. First responders, of course, taking care of the injured. There was a lot of tension in the air. There was a lot of fear. Today, well, I just spoke to people here who say, look, il faut vivre avec. We have to live with it. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen again, but when. And people here in France have proven that they are resilient, that they are strong, and they are going on with their lives today.
All right. Thank you for that, Andy Borges, live in Paris. 1 day after a family of 6, including 4 children, carried out suicide bombings at 3 churches in Surabaya, Indonesia, the police headquarters in the city has also been attacked. Security cameras captured the suspected militants detonating explosives from a motorcycle at a checkpoint. The attacks are said to be linked to prison riots in West Java last week. A police spokesman said civilians and police were victims of the attack. At least 10 people were injured. The final results are expected today in Iraq's first election since the fall of ISIS. So far, a coalition led by Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr holds an early lead. His supporters took to the streets of Baghdad in the early hours to celebrate. Sadr is a strident critic of the United States, who commanded a militia that fought U.S. troops. The U.S.-backed candidate, Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, was running 3rd overall. And still to come for you in the program, outrage in the UK over the Queen's guest this week. Turkey's controversial President Erdogan, and theCUBE will have the details. And a social media firestorm over comments by Israel's Netta after she wins the Eurovision Song Contest. But first, here's a look at the weather. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Our top story this morning: tensions soar in the Middle East as the U.S. prepares to open its new embassy in Jerusalem. Donald Trump's daughter and her husband will attend the ceremony to open an interim facility in the current U.S. consulate. Thousands of Palestinians are expected to gather along the perimeter fence that separates Israel from the Gaza Strip in a protest. Well, the Queen of England is expecting a notable guest today, but not everyone is happy about that. Alex in theCUBE, our social media desk, is going to tell you why. Absolutely, and you have to feel sorry for Her Majesty the Queen in many ways. She doesn't get to choose the visitors that she hosts. That is the government's decision. And the government this time has chosen someone who, in many people's eyes, is a controversial figure. Let's just take a look at these scenes from the weekend. So these are pro-Kurdish demonstrators trying to block the motorcade of President Erdogan as he goes to his first lunch appointment in the UK over the weekend. Now, if we just bring you back to the social media discussion, I mean,
this is just one group protesting against Erdogan coming. Many people claim Theresa May, Prime Minister of the UK, is overlooking human rights concerns in the country in the interests of diplomatic and trade relations. But let's just bring up a couple of points people are making. While the Tories, the leading party, the Conservative Party in the UK, might be rolling out the red carpet, other politicians in the country are not. Here we go, if I can pull it down. Ergin Erbil, he is a councillor in the UK, and he's saying, in the name of freedom of religion and the rights of minorities, Erdogan is not welcome. 2 hashtags here. One at the bottom, hashtag Tamam. We saw that trending last week. It means enough in Turkish, and that's referring to Erdogan's rule in Turkey. Just want to bring up perhaps this one here. This is an open letter written by a journalist in The Guardian. Now, she knows, obviously, that the Queen cannot say the word Tamam to the Queen, but she's still asking, saying, come on, Your Majesty, do something to point these things out. Now, it's an awkward position for the Queen to be in, but this kind of strength of feeling, people saying, should the UK be welcoming someone as controversial as Erdogan, is something that's got a lot of you talking. So what do you think? A friend, a valuable ally, or someone we should be keeping at arm's length? Let us know. Hashtag theCUBE.
All right, thank you for that, Alex, and the theCUBE team. He's come under fire on social media and been accused of giving Nazis, quote, the pretext to harass people of color. Christian Lindner, leader of the German Free Democrat Party, has made some controversial comments about immigration. I'm joined by correspondent Jessica Saltz in Berlin. Jessica, the party of Lindner has not been doing well. His comments, is it because he wants to steer the party another direction?
Well, Tessa, I'm here in central Berlin, outside of a bakery. You can see behind me Berliners queuing up to buy bread and sandwiches for the day, but it's this exact kind of daily activity that Christian Lindner believes could lead to tensions between migrants and Germans. He said very controversial comments at a party congress over the weekend, in which he said that highly skilled and legal migrants could be confused for illegal migrants when they're queuing up to buy bread at a bakery and they speak in broken German. Now, his comments are still causing outrage in media and social media here in Germany today. And it's really being seen as a marked shift for Christian Lindner, that he seems to be echoing the words that we usually hear from the far-right party, the Alternative for Germany. Now, Christian Lindner brought the FDP party ahead of September's elections last year back from the dead, and he did so by appealing to more centrist voters. But here is a real market shift with some real comments that, as I said, we're used to hearing from far-right parties when it comes to migrants and migration.
Has those comments have had any impact on the general conversation surrounding immigration and migrants?
Well, of course, it's a big issue at the moment and conversation still goes on. And of course, the Alternative for Germany really leading the charge when it comes to feeding off the fears and concerns felt by the German public when it comes to migration and integration. But here, Christian Lindner really taking a new stance and putting himself in that camp for the first time. And of course, this time last year, there were no parties to the right of Angela Merkel's Conservative bloc in the parliament. And now we have the far-right Alternative for Germany, the largest opposition party with a very strong anti-migrant message, and Christian Lindner, the leader of the Free Democrats, placing also the Liberal Party there now too. So when the government tries to push through very important upcoming laws on migration and integration, they're going to have a hard time from these two political parties especially.
All right, thank you for that. Jessica Saltz, live in Berlin. More than 60,000 people could be affected as Brussels Airlines begins a 2-day strike today over pay and conditions. Brian Carter, correspondent in Brussels, has more with this brief from Brussels.
It's going to be a very busy week in Brussels with a new round of discussions around Brexit, a visit to the EU by the Iranian Foreign Affairs Minister to try and save the Iran nuclear deal, and the potential fallout from a new Italian government made up of Eurosceptics. We'll keep an eye on all these developing stories, and here's a quick look at some of the other issues covered here in the brief from Brussels. Monday and Wednesday, the pilots of Brussels Airlines will be on strike. It's only the second time in the company's history that the pilots decide not to fly to protest against their wage and working conditions. Hundreds of flights are expected to be grounded as a result. We'll tell you all about this dispute between workers and management at Brussels Airlines. Remember the Rana Plaza disaster in Bangladesh in 2013? More than 1,000 garment workers died when their building collapsed. This tragedy prompted a series of initiatives to improve safety, including one involving major clothing brands, which is being renewed this week. But some members of the European Parliament want to go further and are calling on the Commission to act on a resolution that would force these companies to apply due diligence in their supply chain. And finally, on Wednesday evening and Thursday, the EU leaders will hold a summit with the leaders of Western Balkan countries in Sofia, Bulgaria. The theme of the summit is connectivity, but many are already betting on which countries could become new members of the European Union. What are their chances, and what are the consequences of joining the EU family? It's all in the brief from Brussels.
And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, Eurovision's heading to Israel, but singer Netta ruffled a few feathers on social media. Welcome back to Good Morning Europe. But now, in case you missed it, there's a social buzz happening on Eurovision. Alex, tell us more about this.
There is. Actually, we've just heard in the Cube that Netta, the winner of the Eurovision, has just landed in Israel. So there we go. You haven't missed that. But this is the moment that Israel won that contest over the weekend.
Thank you. I love my country. Next time at Jerusalem.
A very proud moment for Netta there, the Israeli winner. And Benjamin Netanyahu, as you can see here, tweeting about, the Hebrew's not coming up, but tweeting about how proud he was of her winning. Some people, however, were saying, this is a bit controversial, that phrase, next time in Jerusalem, people saying, couldn't it be Tel Aviv to try and, you know, get rid of tensions? However, it's worth saying, Israel has won the Eurovision in the past. It's hosted the contest in Jerusalem in the past. And actually that phrase, next time in Jerusalem, could perhaps be a misunderstanding of the phrase said at the end of Yom Kippur by Jews at the end of that festival. So potentially a bit sensitive there, but a really big weekend for Israel at the Eurovision.
Thank you, Alex, for that. Well, do stay with us on Euronews for more, and we'll leave you with today's No Comment out of Israel.